presentation is on the Wilderness Protocol. And here in Utah, there's a lot of people that know about it, and it's actually saved lives already. And so we're going to talk about what it is and et cetera, et cetera. So let's start the ball here. In discussing the Wilderness Protocol, I'm going to cover three basic topics, and that is what it is, how it came into being, and probably the most important topic, how can I use it to help me or others? So, what is it exactly? The Wilderness Protocol is a dedicated effort to help ensure emergency communications help either in areas beyond normal repeater coverage, or in the event local repeaters are off the air and down or are not reachable in an emergency situation. The purpose of this initiative is to offer stations outside or without repeater range capability an opportunity to be heard when needed the most. The Wilderness Protocol suggests that radio operators in the amateur service monitor standard simplex channels at specific times in case of emergency or priority calls. This means you could say that we have a responsibility as ham radio operators to monitor our radios, even though we aren't involved in a club, net, or some other activity. The primary frequency to monitor is the 14652. That's, of course, the 2-meter national call-in frequency. Then we have alternatives, the 70 centimeter, the 220 band, 6 meter, and 23 centimeter. Basically, you need to ask yourself which band is most often used in your area, and that's what I'd be monitoring. So the idea is to allow communications between hams that are hiking or backpacking in uninhabited areas or outside repeater range, an alternative opportunity to be heard. Though it's mainly used in the wilderness, it's not just for hikers or backpackers or similar situations. It's also available for anyone to use at any time assistance is needed. Heck, when I travel, I always monitor the 5.2, and I even have a sticker on my window that says that I'm monitoring 14652. And you know what? There's even a schedule that everyone should take note of, starting at 7 a.m. in the morning, then every 3 hours local time. And if everybody knows the schedule and the frequency, then you have a lot better chance of contacting somebody out there. If you're in the wilderness hiking, or if you're just monitoring your radio. Let's talk about how it all came about. The Wilderness Protocol first appeared in a QST article called A Wilderness VHF FM Protocol in February of '94. And William Alsup, November 6, X-Ray Mike Whiskey, was the author of that QST article. And I do not know if he pulled that article from somewhere else, or if he's the author of the Wilderness Protocol. I do not know that. If somebody knows that, that would be awesome. It was later reprinted in 1996, so just a couple of years later, by Paul Newland, 87I, and he added some things as well. The article recommends that stations, and it doesn't matter what kind of station you are, whether you're a fixed, portable, or mobile station, monitor the primary at least the primary, secondary if possible, the national simplex calling frequencies every 3 hours starting at 7 a.m. local time for 5 minutes. Additionally, stations that have sufficient power resources, like if you're in your car or if you're in your house and you're running, off the grid or whatnot, you should monitor for 5 minutes starting at the top of every hour, or better yet, even continuously. So now that we know what it is and kind of the story behind it, let's discuss how it can actually help me or the unlucky soul who is in distress and you hear him or her on the radio, which, by the way, could be you. An increasing number of hams who are serious explorers of the wilderness carry handheld transceivers for potential emergency and safety communications. There are, however, two problems. First, without a customary protocol, an HT radio is usually only useful when it's within range of a repeater or some other person that is at line of sight. And as we all know, when you're out in the wilderness, repeaters are generally not near you. Second, an HT's battery power is precious, and backcountry amateurs can't monitor continuously, much less monitor all the possible frequencies for simplex or repeater operations. Using this protocol allows you to conserve battery juice and still contact help. This requires, however, others to be using and to know about the wilderness protocol as well. The wilderness protocol should be something known and practiced by anyone having a ham radio. Especially here in Utah, I'm involved with Salt Lake County ARES, and just part of a good thing to know when you're out, whether on the interstate or you're going up into the canyons. This is one of the reasons why I live where I live. I am 20 minutes away from 6 ski resorts. And so consequently, I consistently am able to talk to people who are hiking the mountains that I can see from my front porch. So it is something that having a ham radio is, especially if I'm actually doing the hiking, is something good to have. And knowing this protocol is even better. So what should we do as ham radio operators? Well, the wilderness protocol is a great idea, but I want to go over a couple of fundamental rules that each one of us should follow. And I think you're going to see what I mean. It's something that we should all do anyway. Rule number 1. This is the most important rule when you're out in the backcountry. You never, ever, ever want to rely solely on your radio or your mobile phones to get you out of trouble in the backcountry. Your primary strategy must be self-sufficiency. You need to prepare for the unexpected. How many times have people gone out to the backcountry and thought that they could get back in time, to realize they turned left when they should have turned right? It started to become dusk. They then became lost. They're panicking. They start making multiple mistakes that are compounding on one another, and now you have a problem. In addition to not ever solely relying on the radios and cell phones, it's also important to do whatever you can to do if you have to rely on your radio. In other words, you want to give yourself every best chance to make a contact. And I'm going to talk about that later on. Rule number 2 is, if I were you, I would want to know what repeaters are available in the area where you will be visiting. You'll want to know the frequency, the offset, the PL tone, if any. And of course, the internet is a great place to get that information. So it makes, I don't know how many people do this on a consistent basis, but when I travel, I want to make sure that I know where the repeaters are along my route, as well as where those repeaters are at my destination. Rule number 3 is in remote areas, monitor the 5.2 as much as possible. This applies to everybody, the backcountry travelers, the mobile stations, and fixed stations. So in Utah, we have a organization called the Utah VHF Society. They are the frequency coordinator, and they keep track of all the repeaters in the state. And so everybody in their own state will have their own method of doing it. Whatever that method is, always refer to that when you're going to go out to the backcountry, and you want to know which repeaters are near you. At least it'll give you the best chance to contact a repeater if you know what repeaters are there in the first place. So one thing that we could do if we need to make a emergency contact is we can use the long tone 0, which is abbreviated as LITC. So what is that? When I first learned about the wilderness protocol, this is the first time I heard about the long tone 0. But once I figured out what it was, once I learned about it, heck, it makes sense. You begin your call, and at this point, you already know you're in distress. You want to try to make an emergency contact out there. So you begin with the transmission of this long tone 0, or the LITC, with about 3 to 10 seconds. I like the 3 or 4 seconds, and we're going to find out what you do during those 3 or 4 seconds. You key up your radio, holding down the 0 key to continuously transmit the 0 DTMF tone. That's why we call it the long tone 0, or the LITC. Then proceed to make your emergency call, and this will help those who are listening recognize that an emergency or a priority call is coming through. I don't know how many times you do this. But when you're involved with something, and even though you may have the radio going on, I'm talking about your ham radio, and people are talking back and forth, and sometimes it's easy to kind of put them in the background, and the radio itself becomes white noise, and you don't really know that someone is in distress. But with that LITC signal, that really allows you to know right away there's something different here. And so it really helps you take notice that a distress call is going to be coming through. So I implore everybody to remind people in your clubs and on the net, and your associations and your 4-wheel drive clubs and everything else, people that you talk to, remind them about the wilderness protocol. And as a matter of fact, there's a couple of things that I'm going to talk about later on that will help us do that. So just to summarize, the times are starting at 7 a.m. local time every 3 hours, using the primary frequency, which, depending on which is most commonly used, here it's the 5.2. And when I travel coast to coast on my Goldwing, for example, or if I'm traveling with my wife in a vehicle, I listen to the 5.2, and I have a sticker on my window to let people know that I'm listening to the 5.2. If you are the person in distress, then you can use the LTSI signal using a DTMF 0. And once that 3 to 4 seconds happens, then you start by saying, break, break, break. This is your call sign, and I need help. It's as simple as that. You continue that for 5 minutes. And if you don't have means to deal with your battery, you want to conserve your battery. So at that point, you turn the radio off, or at least just keep it on receive in case you hear somebody on the airwaves. Now, what I do is I have a Wilderness Protocol card that I will make copies of, and I will give it to a number of people. And we're going to talk about that on who I'm going to give it to. Before leaving, this is something that we should all know already, but we want to tell someone where we'll be and when to expect us back. Okay, that's kind of obvious, but it's amazing how many people don't follow that basic rule. You tell these people that you'll be using the Wilderness Protocol, and more than likely they'll look at you like a deer in the headlight look, and you get to then tell them what that's all about. As a matter of fact, if you pass a ranger station, stop and inform them where you'll be and when to expect your return, and then tell them about the Wilderness Protocol and give them a Wilderness Protocol card. I tell you what, rangers absolutely love that. This gives you every opportunity to be found if something happens. Now, if you're the one in the field, you want to already be prepared for the worst, okay? You're going to know that ahead of time. You're not going to rely on your radio or your cell phone. You're going to assume that you're going to be stranded, okay? Now, remember I said that it was important to give yourself every best chance of making a contact with your radio? One of the best things you can do out in the field is to bring things that will enable your chances of staying on the air and making a contact. Things that I always have with me is a spare battery, or at least a way of recharging my single battery. And you've all heard it before, 2 is 1, 1 is none. I like 2 batteries, and I like to have a way of recharging the battery if at all possible. And something probably, no, not probably, just as important as a spare battery, and that is like a 300 ohm fold-up J-pole antenna that weighs only grams, and will allow your 5-watt radio to act like a 20-watt radio. Everybody knows this. Getting your antenna up high is the way to do it. So you want to try to find a location which is at a higher altitude. Why? Well, you want to get your antenna up as high as possible. And having a fold-up J-pole antenna, heck, I made one. I think it cost me less than $3, and I used the Dr. Fong dual band 300 ohm system that you can find online. And as a matter of fact, my club, the Marine Amateur Radio Club, we made everyone that. And again, it's a little teeny roll-up antenna. It unfolds to about 3 feet. And I tell you what, you put that up higher, even if you don't have it up higher, if you can't get it up high, just having a larger antenna is much better than the antenna that comes with your radio, the rubber ducky antenna. We all know that the rubber duck is just a compromise antenna. It is what it is. That's why I carry a fold-up J-pole, a 300 ohm J-pole with me, so that I want to give myself the best possible chance of making a contact. And here's something that I don't know if you're superstitious or not, but never, never, never say what's the worst that could happen, because I guarantee you, Murphy is listening, and something always worse can happen. So what about the other forms of communications? We talked about ham radio. Well, certainly there's more forms of communications than ham. There's GMRS, FRS, CB, and MERS, just to name a few others. And yes, I know it's blasphemy to even think that there should be another way of communicating. I mean, ham radio is where it's at, right? I don't understand why my wife will not get her ham license. Again, it's blasphemous to say, Dan, no, I don't want to learn ham radio. And turns out a lot of people are like that. And you know what? That's okay. There are other ways of communicating, and there's also other programs within the Wilderness Protocol that is used by GMRS and CB and MERS in particular. The three plans that I know of is one of them is called the 333 plan. So every 3 hours, listen 3 minutes on channel 3. Obviously, we're talking about a channelized system, which is the GMRS and FRS and CB and MERS, since they only have I think 3 channels. So every 3 hours, listen for 3 minutes on channel 3, and you start at 12 noon, and you go using those times there. It looks like every 3 hours. There's no reason why you couldn't also move that to starting at 7 a.m. every 3 hours, but that's just what the 333 plan has on it. There's the Project 321 plan, which is real similar. Channel 3, 2 minutes of listening, 1 hour intervals. If you have the battery, why not do that? And then on the 15, so you can try to contact your family every 30 minutes on the 15 and 45. Regardless of what plan you use, what form of communication you use, what mode you're using, let people know. And as a matter of fact, here's kind of the summary. Identify a plan that will work in your area. You want to educate as many people as you can. You want to pre-plan your trips, let others know your plan, and be safe and have fun in that order. If you don't plan to be safe, then your fun will turn awry. So this was only a 30-minute presentation. We have tons of time for questions. I invite you to go to my YouTube page. Not only this presentation is going to be on the RATPAC page for continual viewing. You can, I have other presentations there on the Salt Lake County areas that you can look at. You can also contact me directly on my email, n7xdl.dan@gmail.com. So let me quickly take a question from Victor. He says, Dan, we spoke prior to this about coverage for 2-hour blocks. Doesn't this elevate when you start transmitting across time zones, Mountain to Pacific? So any considerations for a resolution besides the hope that Pacific is listening at 6? I'm basically dealing with local communications like VHF and UHF. So unless you're right at the border, I don't see that as being an issue, and I will always refer to the local time of wherever your destination is. Now, if it is that you have people who can listen to you and they are at another time zone, let's say I'm in just the east side of Wendover, and actually that's not where the time zone change is. It's into Nevada where the time zone, let's say it's on the border. Okay. And it could be on the border. I don't know. Unless you have people that are real close to the other side, I don't think that's really going to be an issue. But if you're dealing with multiple time zones, then let people know that you're transmitting locally on your local time zone. Okay. I think that's where you have to make certain that everybody knows that. Yes, Murphy was an optimist. And that's very true. Any other questions about the wilderness protocol? Maybe as you're thinking about it, I can tell you an example of how it saved somebody here in the Utah wilderness, in the desert. I had a gentleman who went for Wheeling. He was actually he's a photographer and taking some wildlife pictures, and he's also a ham radio operator, and he got lost. He was following some eagles or something, and his GPS, his mapping software, if you don't have the right map loaded, it looks like there's no roads there, right? And it doesn't help you. And so he actually used the wilderness protocol to contact somebody here in the valley, and they were able to find him, talk with him, and direct him down from the mountains. It was kind of funny because he was near a node where he turned on his APRS, and the person here in town in Salt Lake was able to actually see where he was, where the APRS was pinging his vehicle from, and he was able to direct him exactly how to get out of that trouble. So I know that it works. The more people know about this protocol, I think the better. And I'd love to hear if anybody has used the wilderness protocol before. Question is, where could we find a wallet-sized card that can be laminated with the wilderness protocol? You can go ahead and take a screenshot of that card that I had on the presentation when Dan and the crew publishes the presentation. And heck, you can make your own. That's what I did. I just made my own with the wilderness protocol on there. If you want, you can email me and I will send you the formatted card that I use. And, if you want to start there, you can do that. There's nothing special or copyrighted about any of this stuff. So make it so that it's yours. Let's see, the ARRL repeater atlas used to have this info, but that has gone the way of the dinosaur. There's a lot of things, a lot of good ideas that do that. So that's unfortunate. Okay. Other questions?
We got a couple of hands up here. And then when you're done there with your presentation, we have one other party that wants to talk about the same subject. Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I kind of always push there's this wilderness protocol, but the response I always get is, well, there's so much chit chat and noise on 5.2 that I don't want to listen to it. And I know that this isn't my idea. I was searching wilderness protocol on the internet, and in several places they use a PL of 100. So you can listen to 5.2 and it'll be dead quiet. And as soon as someone comes on with on 5.2 with the 100 PL set in their handheld and hits that long tone 0, boy, it wakes you up and you know about it. Go ahead.
There's a true HF radio operator. Go ahead. um, so I agree with you with only one exception, and that is anytime you're limiting yourself because you have to do the PL receive 100, right? And you won't be able to hear any other, won't break the squelch with someone who is just trying to chit chat with you. Now, if your sole purpose of monitoring the 5.2 or whatever national calling frequency you're doing, I just think that adds complexity. There's no reason, and this is why I like the Litzy, is you can turn your volume down way low so you don't have to listen to the chit chat and things that you don't like to hear. But when that DTMF tone comes out, even when the volume is low, I can hear it. It is quite distinct. And so that is my suggestion. It certainly solves a problem of doing that, but it introduces other problems that I'm not sure is worth it. That's entirely up to you, though.
Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you. Couple quick things. One about the traffic on 5.2, and I listen to a lot of guys doing soda. They're always on at that time when there's, one of those specified hours. But I've never known a radio operator that wouldn't break for emergency traffic. I mean, it's just something that we're geared and we're prepared to do. I mean, the emergency takes priority, and I think everybody understands that. The second thing, one of the best things I've learned to have anytime you go hiking in any survival kit is to have a deck of cards. You get lost, you get in trouble, lay out a game of solitaire. Pretty soon somebody will come tap you on the shoulder and say, no, play that card here.
That's not a bad idea. And again, that's one of the things that people get themselves into trouble. They do not stay put. And 9 times out of 10, and I don't know if it's 90% or if it's lower than that, but I hear, I work with the Timpanogos Emergency Response Team. We look for lost hikers. We deal with search and rescue. If people would just stay put, it would go a long way for them to do that. And having a deck of cards does 2 things. One, it keeps you staying put, right? And it keeps you calm, and it keeps your mind off of the bobcat that's crawling up behind you. My point is not panicking is critical in a high stress situation. And when you're lost and when you think you're going to die, that is a high stress situation, isn't it? So having a deck of cards is not a bad idea. Let me say, why don't you have 2 deck of cards? One, you could use it as a breadcrumb. Of course, you only have 52 breadcrumbs, but you and then you have litter and that kind of stuff. So anyway, you're gonna have to figure out ways to deal with that. But yes, excellent suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, no more hands up. How are we doing in chat, Barry?
Everybody's keeping up to date.
Oh, you're breaking up bad, Barry.
Everything's been keeping it up to date. Jeff wanted to know about if you press keeps the mic at the same time. I believe they do, yeah.
You have to turn your DTMF on, and when you do that, when you push 0 and transmit, you have to do it at the same time. People who use patch systems know that to do this all the time, right? To turn on the DTMF. By default, if you do that on your radio, you'll hear nothing. So you have to turn that option on. And then when you transmit your 0, you'll get the tone.
Okay, Dan, California, go ahead.
Okie dokie. So, if I remember correctly, Alaska is 3/5 the landmass of the lower 48. And everybody in Alaska had an aviation AM radio. So if you got in trouble, every commercial, military, and bush pilot had a VFO on 121.5. And everybody knew that, and it was used. I'm not sure if the FAA approved of it, but they certainly didn't. They had enough good sense not to object to it, especially in Alaska. Another thing is we used to teach school children hug a tree, which meant that if you got lost, don't go anywhere. Just stay right where you are. And that actually saves a lot of kids from getting, the half mile away, 2 miles away, where in wilderness, it could be dangerous for them.
Yep, exactly.
And a dog will just walk right up on them if they stay put once they realize they're lost. So just those kind of tidbits. Every locale is going to have different customs and how they do it. And one thing is, if you're lost and mobile, always walk downhill. No matter where you are, go downhill. And in Alaska, the story was if you did that for 7 days, you were lost in the wilderness then. Because within 7 days of walking downhill, you were likely to find at least a cabin. But it's not funny. I mean, people get injured, and search and rescue is a, how do I say it, underfunded effort wherever there are mountains and people who want to go have adventures in them.
I don't know if we're limited to mountains or not. Deserts have a big challenge.
Well, yeah. And nobody believes how much water they need to stay healthy in the desert. It's education, basically.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, okay. Richard's got his hand up again. Hear that? He's waving.
Thank you. You asked earlier about has the wilderness protocol been used in my area, and I can't tie it specifically to the wilderness protocol. I know last summer we did have an operator get in trouble, and there were enough people listening and close to him that they were able to get him assistance. I think there was an issue of a fire going on at the time, and he had injured his foot or something, his ankle. So he spent the night overnight up there, and he was okay with that. And then they got search and rescue up there in the morning to help him get out. But again, I won't tie it to the wilderness protocol, but certainly radio relay is the key component of this whole program. So very good. Thank you.
Part of the wilderness protocol is more than just the radio. Rule number 1 in the wilderness protocol is assume that your radio will not help you, right? So if you don't know how to survive where you're going, you need to learn. And it's the simple stuff that gets people in trouble. And so, just knowing the basics, how to start a fire. Heck, if you can start a fire, then you can use that for signaling, whether that's day or night, using smoke to your favor. There's just so many things that you learn as that you should know if you're going hiking. And, I've been talking about dealing with single hikers. Well, it's usually best to hike and have a partner with you, right? In case something happens. So there's a lot of things that you should be doing anyway. And certainly one of them is being prepared for where you're going, and that means carrying water, carrying ways to purify water, dealing with food rations, whatever it is. You know where you're going and the type of terrain that you're going to hit. You need to assume that you need to stay overnight. It doesn't take much to be well prepared. And yes, you can't prepare for every contingency, but people who are prepared a little is a lot better than people who go out there just on the spur of the moment. Hey, honey, let's go hiking and let's take this new route that we've never been on before. Oh, that's a recipe for disaster. Do your homework and be able to come home and tell your grandkids the story of the hike that you did, right? Instead of having something on the headstone saying he died enjoying what he loved doing, hiking. I think that's a poor excuse if you're not prepared, right? So anyway.
Okay. If there's no more questions, John up here in Idaho said he had something to add to the program, if you don't mind.
Fantastic.
Go ahead, Don.
All right, thank you. As those that know me know that I'm an emergency manager as a full-time job, also involved with ARES. In our region up here in northern Idaho, the protocol is used and we've tested it and practiced it. In fact, I'm going to put in the chat a link. This is a link to the WinLink part of Idaho's project, but you'll look under their other ham projects. It's the actual protocol. That's where you can find a copy of it. So what we've done is, it's easy in my area because I'm the emergency manager. We get with the emergency managers and the ham radio operators and we run tests, we run nets, and we see and we map where we can reach from the emergency management office out and who can relay messages to the next emergency management office. We've done that up here earlier this year. Very successful, a lot of fun. It's something we're going to recommend statewide in Idaho. But one thing about the protocol is we really encourage people, when you use it, and even if you're using the tone, tell them what channel you're on, because there's people that are scanning radios that aren't looking at that radio when it pauses for a second and then it goes back to scanning. Just say, I have an emergency, I'm on the national call 52 or on 14652. Use something to identify what channel you're on. Even if you're using a local repeater for an emergency call, tell them what repeater you're using, because so many people are scanning more than one channel and they might hear it, but not turn and look, see the radio in time to know what channel you were on. Next, we strongly promote using it in any emergency, because where I live, everywhere is wilderness and wildfire is a way of life. And we want you to go to the protocol of listening to it if you got a good battery system, and be available for anybody that has issues because of wildland fire or other issues, snowstorms, so on and so forth. It's more than just if you're in the wilderness, it's in any emergency, and that's what we're promoting. And you'll see that in the document that if you get it off the link that I sent. We want you to really open it up and keep it in your radio scanner. When you travel, like Dan of Utah was saying, that's great, because if I'm in Utah with no tone on it, I'll hear somebody locally, and that's a lot of benefit. And for those that are more homebound ham radio operators, we really encourage them to make sure that frequency is in their system. We hope to make it a statewide standard of the 14652. That's something we're working on. But also, one thing that you've got to realize, in Idaho, we are 2 time zones. In fact, it's right real close to me. They're in Riggins, Idaho. And that's in one county. One county has to have their sheriff's office work on 2 time zones. So it's a challenge, and we have not found a perfect solution. So know what time zone you're in, and that's probably the best choice you have. So with that, we're hoping to put some exercises out statewide here for Idaho. We think it's really important because It can be any disaster. It could be a broke down car on a highway where there's nobody traveling today. Those kind of things are emergencies to anybody. So that's what I wanted to share. That thank you, Dan, K7REX, for letting me share that. And I'll take any questions, or Dan of Utah can continue to take questions.
I might suggest something here, Don. Since you're in Idaho, why not, if you haven't already, document that, document all that, put it on the ARES website, and then use the ARES website to broadcast that out to all of our ARES members statewide. Hopefully some of them will also put it on their local clubs websites and such. This is a good
Right. We're gonna push a pretty big push during the field day week in June and really get this out there for Idaho. One thing that I recommend for everybody, from your home, test it where you can reach from your home, map it out, know where your range is, know what grid square you can get to, work with other ham clubs and see what you can do.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Don or Dan, either one? I don't see any hands up. You're monitoring chat, aren't you, Barry?
Yes, I am. Everything is good.
Well, we ended up having two presentations here tonight. Well, Dan,
Victor has a hand up.
he sure does. I see that. I'm going to give him a sticker to stick up there. See this? Okay, so Victor, go ahead.
Just put my call sign up. To county sheriff working across 2 time zones. It's always bothered me in a way, the way we use our time zones in this country. And I'm surprised that the sheriff hasn't gone to GMT. Take the county government, pass a law that says we're using GMT. Right now, I'm coming up on the 0100 hour Zulu. It's that simple. If everybody was talking the same language, it doesn't matter which side of the line I'm on. It's coming up on 0100.
Yeah,
Simplify
and
everything.
Victor, you are right. And they do have that kind of style, but the problem is the public doesn't do that. And you need to know the time a call came in. Did it come in on Pacific time or Mountain time? 6 o'clock, 7 p.m. We deal with a lot of wilderness in that time zone change, and that's part of the hiccup.
I understand that. I
Okay,
understand that. Have a great evening. Thank you very much.
all right. Any more questions out there?
In a perfect world, we would all be using UTC for our day-to-day operations, right? But you know, we're still supposed to be learning metric system, right? So us Americans, we don't like to learn new stuff, I guess.
Well, if you're in the military or a military type organization, that makes a whole lot of sense because you are dealing with people in different time zones all the time if you're not on the move yourself. A lot of civilians don't see it that way.
Yeah.
So it is a problem to engage in that direction. Okay, anybody else?
I just want to make a quick comment on Don's addition to the presentation. I want to tell him thank you. I will be adding that some of that information into my presentation because I think that is some very, very, very good ideas. And this is one of the things about giving presentations. You know, you think you've done your research, but someone always has a different experience. And this is why I love ham radio and talking to a lot of different people, because there's, you know, you get a lot of different perspective, which is excellent. So thank you, Don.
Okay, somebody asked Don for his email address. They put it in the chat. Don might come back on and publicize it here. So those that want to contact him will have that.
Yeah, it's on the email address, but my email is typical government D Gardner, that's GARDNER at clearwatercounty.org. But it's in the chat.
Okay. This has been interesting. The presentation here doubled up on us here. This is great. Okay, is there anybody else? Any questions, comments? Answers? Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to close it out. Thank everybody for participating in whatever way you did. And we look forward to doing more of this kind of stuff. 73s, have a real good weekend. See you all when I see you.